All right. Welcome, everybody. We are live. Moneyline MMA coming to you guys for another week of UFC fight coverage. Jose and I have been continuing our dominance in our picks, our weight system picks to be specific, in which we pick 5 fights from any given UFC card and rank them in order of confidence, with the 5 weight being our most confident pick and the 1 being our least confident. Of course, those 5 picks are still of the 5 most confident picks we have on the card. However many fights there are this Saturday, there will be 14. This is UFC Vegas 89 that will be coming to us, headlined by Amanda Ribas fighting Rose Namajunas, coming up to the flyweight division. Really quickly, before we get too deep into the fights for this Saturday, let's cover last Saturday. And for a lot of folks out there, it was a disastrous night. Of course, in terms of my 5 weight, it was another disastrous night, unfortunately, with Kennedy and Checo getting the split decision loss to OSP, and it looked completely warranted. This is a card I wasn't really able to watch as much, but based on what I was able to see in some of the recap videos and just the statistics too, Kennedy did not incorporate anything into his game besides let me punch OSP in the head. He had like 5 leg kicks landed in this whole fight. No takedowns. I think each of them tried one takedown and it was denied. Like, this is just a stand and box match in which Kennedy, in a situation that I figured he would thrive in against an old aging veteran, couldn't get the job done. I think it completely exposed him being a one-trick pony. If he can't get the knockout, he loses. Just saying, we got to keep our eye out for Kennedy as a parlay buster. And to be honest, maybe that's what I deserve for putting one of the bigger favorites as my 5 weight pick. Jose was at least able to salvage his 5 weight pick, as he did have Gerald Meerschaert, so he does get the 5 weight streak continuation. Of course, outside of my 5 weight, I had a great night. 3-1 because Brian Battle and Andre Lusa was, I believe there was an eye poke to Lusa, and he was unable to continue. So that fight won't go down with a winner or a loser. But in general, I'll take a 3-1 night. Jose did end up only going 1-3, but at least his 5 weight continues strong. So week in and week out, you can rely on Jose getting that pick right, and at least for my end of things, staying above 500. So let's keep that heat going into this week with a tough card. I mean, it's definitely not an exciting card, at least compared to some of the cards we've not only had in the past couple of weeks, but what we're seeing come up next month. Of course, it's UFC 300, so I'm not going to act like this card is some special blessing to us from UFC, that it's just going to be crazy, especially name value wise. But I will say, to give it some credit, I think some of these fights on here, although they may not have top contenders, they are going to lead down. We're going to look at some of these fights down the line and recognize some absolute studs, because there's some like of the 14 fights, there's some like 5 or 6 fighters like making their UFC debut or coming off the Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter. It's like a lot, actually, of UFC prospect talent in this card. So there's a high chance in a couple of weeks or months down the line, we look back at this card for some of these guys and say, hey, this is the night that he started his run. So it'll be eager to see what transpires. But if you guys want to know who Jose and I are picking, stick around for the next half hour, because we're going to bring to you our 5 weights first, and that'll slowly move down to our 4 weights. We'll give our most confident picks first, as always. So for Saturday night, to kick it off, I'm going to announce my 5 weight as one of the earlier fights on the card, and it also has one of the biggest line movements of the card. It's a very interesting situation between Billy Quarantillo and Youssef Zalal. And I think this is a really interesting situation here, in which Youssef Zalal was in the UFC, right? And then he got cut, presumably. I don't have like an exact article or something that says he was cut from the UFC, but he had 3 straight losses and then a majority decision draw, and then he had a couple of fights in regional promotions, and he was like 2 or 3 wins in a row, and he also got a boxing and a kickboxing matches. So he essentially was winning some regional fights, right? And all of a sudden, the UFC is like, we need someone to fight Billy Q on our main card. Who are we going to use? I have no idea. Let's bring Yusuf Zalal back. That's a great idea. And it's crazy to me, Jose, that from what I'm seeing, Billy Q opened up this card at like minus 300 as a favorite. Huge favorite, which in my opinion makes sense because strictly looking at some of the experience that Zalal has fought in the UFC, it's done him a bad time. He did go to the distance versus Ilia Topuria that most people want to call out, right? But this is Ilia Topuria's UFC debut 4 years ago. I don't think that you can expect Ilia Topuria to be the guy he is right now today for all of the last 4 years. That's crazy. So that to me isn't as big of a factor. Sure, he went the distance. That's cool. He went the distance with everybody. Yusuf Zalal has never finished someone in the UFC or been finished, which is another interesting stat. But Billy Q, just to get down to the meat and potatoes of my handicap here, Billy Q is the kind of guy that's going to get in your face and he's not going to back off. He's going to provide all sorts of pressure. He did it against Damon Jackson. Jose and I were there to see it. We met Billy Q after the fight. It was a great time, and we got to party a little bit. But the fact of the matter is that you know what you're getting out of Billy Q. It's going to be solid. He's going to come in your face. He's going to punch you, and he's going to do what he can. He's going to eat some damage, sure, but he's going to deal more damage than he's eating. And I fully expect the small cage at the UFC Apex to be beneficial to him. I don't think Zalal, he's out here winning kickboxing fights. Well, that is not going to help. And not in a UFC ring. So I'm just saying, to me, it's crazy that not only does the man open up at minus 300, but you can get Billy Q at minus 156 right now on FanDuel. That is insane that some people have bet on Yusuf Zalal that much as an underdog. I get it. He's won some fights in regional, and he started out in the UFC as a 3-0 fighter, but he was just fighting cans. And this is also 4 years ago. Sure, Yusuf Zalal could have improved a little bit, but that improvement is not going to be good enough to beat Billy Q. So mark it down. For me, I'm very, very confident this Saturday that Billy Q gets the win.
Yeah, Nick, I 100% agree with you on that. Not much to say. You actually nailed it right on the head. I'm going with Billy Q, even though, yeah, he's only coming off a one fight win, and then he obviously lost to Edson Barboza, which Edson's just brutal with how he works the body. So no shame in there. But Yusuf, I am, Billy's my four weight, but everyone just because of the card, it's just not like you mentioned, not the best card. So Billy was originally my four weight, but I needed a five weight, so I just had to bump him up, and I bumped everybody up. But that being said, a lot of value still behind Yusuf, I would say. He's riding a 3-fight winning streak, and he is a finisher, and he's been getting them all in the first round. But I think Billy, like as you mentioned, is going to be tough in coming forward, and I can see this one actually going to decision. Billy, out of his 18 wins, he's got 5 decisions, and I think this one, Yusuf, just because he's never really been finished before, so I think this one's just going to be overall just damaged by Billy Q. I think Billy Q is definitely going to take some gonna get some back at his way, but I think overall he should win this via unanimous decision, and I feel good enough that yeah, he is my 5 weight. And when it comes down to how they line up, well, UFC is being lame right now, not letting me open it up, so I'm just gonna have to call it right there at that. But you nailed it right on the head. Billy Q, he's my 5 weight. I agree with you.
For sure, man. And to be honest, one of the only things I'd really add to that is that I think Billy Q's dangerous on the ground as well. And I do see that Zalal is landing over 2 takedowns, at least previously in his previous tenure at the UFC. I'm sure some of his style has changed. But my point here is that Billy Q, as I understand it, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And I get that there's different levels to being a black belt, and certain coaches might give it out easier than others. But Billy Q is no joke on the ground. He's never been submitted in his professional career, and I would expect him to be better on the ground grappling-wise than Yusuf Zalal, simply because Zalal may have one more submission win on his professional record, but those submission wins are against, in my opinion, cans of the regional scene, in which Billy Quarantillo has been in the UFC, and he's done it in the UFC for years at this point. So, and he has finishes on the ground in the UFC. It might not be a crazy amount, but it's at least something. Something tangible I can look at in reference to saying, yes, Billy Q has the ability to submit someone in the UFC. So that for that reason, it's really just hesitancy to bet on a guy that's really just only been impressive outside of the UFC. I can't expect him to come in the UFC and be a seasoned veteran like Billy Q. So sounds like we have even five weights. Yeah, just to reiterate, we don't discuss these picks ahead of time. So the fact that we have even five weights just tells you guys how confident we are going to be in him. Separately, having picked him as the most confident pick on this card, that will definitely be the money line MMA lock of the week. But from there, we can move on to Jose's four weight.
Yes, and for my four weight, this is the matchup between is the bantamweight matchup between Peyton Talbot and Cameron Simon. Right now, Peyton Talbot is the betting favorite at -158, while Cameron Simon is the betting underdog at +124. This one, I'm going with Peyton Talbot. You know, dude is an undefeated prospect, looking really good. He's only 25 years old, and he's done it all. He's a finisher, but he can also go to decision when need be. And he hasn't been in the UFC long, but he has had a good amount of experience already fighting under Uriah Faber's promotion, and also he's been on the Dana White's Contender Series. And as we saw him against Nick Aguirre, you get that third round submission choke, which is proving that they can make it way down the line and get wins like in the third round. While Cameron Simon, he just came off a loss to Christian Rodriguez most recently, and Christian Rodriguez, he himself, he just won a split decision this past weekend against Isaac Dalgarian, which I had Dalgarian as my choice, and obviously I did not get it. But that being said, Cameron Simons is a real deal too. His one loss is against a legit contender. And this one, again, this one was originally my 3 weight as well, but because I had to bump everybody up, this is my 4 weight now. And I am going with Peyton Talbot in general, just because how the matchup is as well in between these two. He has the longer reach advantage, so I think he's gonna how much I like that. He's got a 3.5-inch reach advantage. So that being said, I think he's gonna definitely get the better end of the significant strikes. And thus far, even though they haven't been in the UFC long, Peyton Talbot, he has a 6.66 significant strikes that land per minute, while Cameron Simon has a 5.28. So this is definitely going to be in the feet, and both have a pretty moderately good absorption ratio, which is 3.12 for Talbot and 3.24 for Cameron Simon. So I think both dudes are definitely going to be dishing it out way more than they're going to be and going to be receiving it. But just because Peyton Talbot, he's got the longer reach, and he is also slightly taller, just by 2 inches. I just think overall he's just going to be the one to break down Cameron Simon soon. Sooner than later. And I think when it comes to the grappling department, Peyton Talbot is pretty difficult to get taken down. He sports right now an 88% takedown defense. But to be honest, not much has really been seen out of both. I think Cameron Simon himself has strong grappling, and I would like to see him. Maybe he will get some more control time on Peyton Talbot. But in general, I think if it's on the feet, Talbot all the way. And so I have him as taking the win on this one. And I would even say he is mostly a finisher. To be exact, and Cameron Simon's never been finished, but man, I honestly would be open to that happening. So for this one, I got Peyton Talbot as my 4 weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
I love the handicap, man. I think so. I won't even start my handicap before I give the pick, because for me on this one, I've got Peyton Talbot as well, but I'm a little less confident there. I got him at a 2 weight. I was debating between 1 weight or 2 weight, and mainly because I still have a lot of respect for Simon, but in the end, it kind of came down to his most recent couple of fights. I just wasn't impressed enough with Simon against Christian Rodriguez. I like Christian a lot, and he's from where I'm from, so I tend to have a bias maybe. C-Rod is a great fighter, but he got outstruck, and Cameron Simon tried to land 5 takedowns. C-Rod got taken down like 6 or 7 times by Dalgarian. Cameron Simon couldn't land 1. Just not impressed really with what we saw to Simon in that fight. He had a couple of moments, but in the end, it kind of seemed, easy. It was a unanimous decision. He kind of got worked by C-Rod. And then before that, okay, he gets the first round KO. How awesome is that? Well, it's against the guy that I'm not even sure should be in the UFC. I mean, like, it's kind of mean to say, but dude's gotten finished in the first round, back-to-back fights. Just not sure Cameron Simon's really fought anybody worth anything. I will say I'm surprised UFC put this matchup together so early. I feel like Talbot and Simon are both prospects in this division, and typically the UFC builds them up a little bit more. So I'm fascinated that the UFC said, screw it, let's put them in the cage and see whoever wins is going to get the higher level of promotion from us. And yeah, it kind of just comes down to Talbot's ability to be a finisher, and in one way or the other, right? Like his first submission win of his entire professional career was his last fight against Nick Aguirre. So I like to see things like that. It doesn't mean to me like, oh yeah, Talbot's just gonna choke everybody out. He must be amazing as a grappler. I'm not saying that, but I just like that he finds ways to win, and he well outstruck Aguirre as well. It wasn't even really close. I mean, yeah, they got into the third round, but I think it was very obvious who was winning that fight. So this will be interesting. It's probably the toughest. Well, I shouldn't say that. Simon is not seeing, like, I would say C-Rod is for sure tougher than Peyton Talbot. I think C-Rod would also beat Peyton Talbot if they fought. But, so maybe that's the one thing, right, for Simon, is that he's not necessarily seeing a step up in competition as to what he saw in his last fight. But in any case, I don't really think that's going to be some sort of like game changer. Oh my gosh, he's seen harder fighters. Like, I just don't think Cameron Simon is that good. I think Peyton Talbot comes in here. Maybe he doesn't finish him. Like you mentioned, Simon hasn't been finished, and he's not going to be someone easy to put out. But I really do think unanimous decision will come our way. You could easily take the decision no action bet for Peyton Talbot, which pretty much means he has to not get finished and win at least one round, and he wins the bet no matter what. That's a really good bet to take, I think, for Talbot in this scenario, because I really don't see him getting finished. And even if he loses a decision, in my opinion, it'll be split.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. If it is a loss, it's going to be split too. That's how I truly feel about that. So, that being said, yeah, I definitely see Pat Talbot getting this most likely unanimous decision, as you mentioned too, just because, yeah, both guys just in general haven't been finished. So I do think this will go to the end of the 3 rounds. But that being said, yeah, we both agree on Payne Talbot. He is my four weight, and he is your 2 weight.
Yeah, so I'm going to take us downtown to the main event of Saturday afternoon. Let's take a little break here before I get into things. You mentioned the Bulgarian fight in our last handicap, and I had seen a lot of discourse. Like I mentioned, I wasn't really able to catch a lot of the fights on Saturday, but I have seen a lot of people upset at that decision, saying that C-Rod should have lost, Bulgarian should have won. And I just think it's really interesting. Like, that fight alone just seemed like such an outlier of a fight, because Bulgarian 10-8'd C-Rod in round 1, and C-Rod 10-8'd Bulgarian in the third round. It was all about round 2, and Bulgarian had like 4 minutes of control time, but landed like 5 punches. So it's like I get that the people are upset because it's like, oh, he held him down. What do you mean he wrestled him? But it's like, he still got outstruck. Like, to what degree can you just go, like, it's like, I'm trying to say, with jiu-jitsu guys, with Gracies, when you see a Gracie get in the jiu-jitsu or even in the UFC, he just sits down and he's like, here, take my guard, please, I'm begging you. And it felt like Bulgarian was doing the same thing, just the wrestling version. He's not gonna choke you out. He's just gonna sit there, be like, I'm on top, I'm happy here, I'm doing good, right? Like, do something. And I'm wondering if that's what the judges were trying to make a message, like, do something. Yes, it's hard to sit on somebody for 5 minutes. I understand that. But do something. This is UFC. You're supposed to make him hurt. The damage is part of the scoring. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not trying to say of course I'm favored and biased because I picked C-Rod. Of course I want him to win. And I would have said that he wins. But there's an argument for Bulgarian, no doubt about it. I just wanted to also mention the fact that it's crazy that they 10-8'd each other in rounds 1 and 3, and it comes down to round 2 for who wins. I mean, so I don't think I've seen that in the UFC. That's crazy. Like 10-8s are rare enough, but for each guy to get a 10-8, crazy. That's crazy right there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I'm honestly obviously on the board of being upset that Christian Rodriguez got that win, but that's obviously because I had Bulgarian on my weight system. But yeah, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and my last note on that is just that Bulgarian's very clearly a terrible striker. Can't stand with any, but it certainly can't stand with average guys in that division. Because wow, anytime it seemed like he was going to get threatened, he's shooting for a takedown. Oh yeah, the round he got 10-8'd in, he couldn't land a takedown. He got 0 for 6. So uh, I'm just kind of making out loud mental notes. Next time we see Bulgarian pop up on a card, if he's fighting a boxer, I I'm not picking him. That's hilarious. He's going to get knocked out. But yeah, that being said, as I mentioned before, I'm taking us downtown to the main event for my 4-weight pick. I said screw it. You know, it is women's MMA, so it makes me a little nervous to put higher weight on it. But in the end, this is the main event, and this is somebody who is a former UFC champion. I'll admit, not at flyweight, right? And Rose is up a weight class from 115 to 125, but I am still picking her as my 4-weight against Amanda Ribas to win. I just think Rose is obviously the better overall fighter here. Of course, Ribas has a submission threat, but to me, I'm not really concerned about Rose being submitted. Uh, of course, Rose fights Carla Esparza. It's super boring, and part of the reason she didn't get submitted is because she didn't want to wrestle, and it was a boring fight. And Rose has been submitted once before by Carla Esparza, so that's why she was nervous in that boring rematch for the belt. So, look, I'm really not that concerned. The Cookie Monster is one of the best grapplers in women's MMA, period, flat out. And I'm not trying to take much away from Amanda Ribas, but I just don't think she's at that level. If she was, she'd be fighting for the belt. So that being said, of course, Ribas thinks she can get to that point by beating Rose. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think Rose deflects any takedown attempts. Amanda Ribas does not have a great takedown. Like, she doesn't have great wrestling. Yes, she has submission threat, but she's not going to be sitting here landing 5 takedowns against her opponents. In fact, I don't think she's ever landed more than 3 in a loss against Caitlin Chikagian at the time. So just saying, she can land a takedown, the girl get up anyway. So in my opinion, Rose Namajunas is the better well-rounded fighter. She's definitely the better boxer. This fight stands on the feet, and Rose just pieces her up. I thought Rose did a great job against Manon Fiorot. I thought Manon was going to go in there and dice her up, make it look easy. Rose had broken finger or two after that fight. She's still throwing punches. I don't know. Very impressed. Gutsy performance by Rose there. And to me, Rose handles this fight by unanimous decision. Unless we just get like some weird version of her. She's obviously like kind of a head case maybe. I don't know if that's rude to say, but it does seem like Rose has some stuff going on up top. Whether it's mental or it's because of some of the relationships or whatever she's got going on in her personal life. If we get the Rose that we should get and that we've seen, she's going to win this fight in my opinion. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. My biggest worry is that she's moving up in weight, but that being said, yeah, she's the former champ, and the last 2 losses were tough. But Fariel, she's just a big prospect in this division as well. And as you mentioned, the Carla Esparza fight too. Yet that definitely was just one of the most boring fights I've ever seen. But when it comes down to it, Rose has beaten and shown she can beat the best of the best. For example, Weili Zhang, and back when Joanna Jędrzejczyk was in her prime as well, and she's just beating other big names like Tisha Torres and Jessica Andrade, former champ right there. So she's been there with the who's who, and I just think these last 2 fights, especially that Carlos Esparza fight, was a split decision loss. Again, boring. I actually really wouldn't care who it went to, but you could argue could have been her, a win for her. But I want to see what improvements she has made from that decision loss to Fariat, because I think the one thing Rose Namajunas has over Ribas is more power behind her punches, but I think Ribas herself in general has a higher volume of punches. And when it comes to significant strikes, yeah, Amanda Ribas lands 4.92 significant strikes per minute, while Rose Namajunas lands 3.68. So I do think Amanda Ribas is going to piece up Rose a little bit on the feet, but I think Rose is just going to land the bigger shots and put more damage on Amanda Ribas. Because the only thing about Rose Namajunas too, she tends to be a little gun shy. She just needs to get comfortable and let her hands loose. But when she doesn't, that's when she starts just getting outclassed by fighters who are really not as good as her. So that's the one thing I just hope does not happen, is that she just kind of gets overwhelmed, and she, as you mentioned, she just has things that go inside her head, and it's been shown before that, yeah, that definitely takes a toll on her performance. So if she does have a clear mind and she doesn't let Amanda Ribas just overwhelm her with strikes, I think, Rose Namajunas can easily either knock her out or even sink in a submission. But I do think, or even just straight up win unanimously. But overall, I do think that she carries more power, though, to cause more damage to Amanda Ribas, and therefore also possibly knock her out. And I feel comfortable that she's moving up a weight class, because even then, in this, there's really not much of a size difference. She's actually an inch taller than Amanda Ribas, and Amanda Ribas only has a 1 inch reach advantage, so it's kind of just all levels out pretty well. I like it that she's moving up a weight class. I'm excited to see her, and hopefully she brings more power at this weight class. So that being said, yeah, I have Rose Namajunas as my 3 weight.
Sounds good, man. So yeah, yet another agreement from us. A little bit different there on the weights, but pretty similar at the same time. That's probably going to be our second best lock of the week, in terms of combined score there. So, or combined weight. So yeah, Rose Namajunas is going to be my 4 weight. Jose's 3 weight moving forward. So yeah, that actually takes care of 3 of the fights that we're discussing here. And Jose, I think that brings us down to your 2 weight.
Yes. Did you want to talk about your 3 weight first, or?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we can do that. I'm
Okay.
open to that for sure.
Okay. Cool.
Because we haven't covered my 3 weight yet, so let's just go right at it. I'm picking between the heavyweights here for my 3 weight. Of course, this is replacement. Replacement in that Junior Tafa had to step in for his brother Justin Tafa a few weeks ago, when Justin, I believe, had an injury or something. Junior steps in, and now Junior got destroyed, decimated. Jose and I both had that pick coming. Both won some good money off of that. Sorry, Junior, but I don't, at the same time, sorry, not sorry. I won some good money. And now his better, more experienced older brother is stepping in against Carl Williams, who is expecting to fight the younger Tafa. And for my 3 weight, Jose, this is the co-main event also, I should mention. Kind of late add to the co-main event from what I've seen. I haven't tracked this card like super long, but I don't think this was originally listed as the co-main event. In any case, Carl Williams is undefeated in the UFC so far, and I'm predicting that streak to end. Justin Tafa will beat, maybe even finish, Carl Williams. We've seen it in the past. Carl Williams has done well against some of his UFC competition, but none of them have been good, right? I guess the vanilla gorilla, Chase Sherman, is probably the toughest fighter he's beat, who's now doing BKFC and BKMMA, right? Because he's not good enough to even be in the UFC. And we can talk about how Chase Sherman and some of the previous opponents against Carl Williams have been able to kind of dice up his legs. And to be honest, that's one of the biggest things I expect to make the difference in this heavyweight bout. I expect Justin Tafa to use leg kicks and just his general size. Like, he is a guy who kind of has to cut to even get to the heavyweight limit. Some heavyweights sit at like 240, 250. Cyril Gahn kind of guys don't even have to cut. Justin Tafa has been overweight. He's huge. So you're telling me Carl Williams, averaging 4 takedowns per fight in the UFC, is going to come in and take down Justin Tafa? I don't think so. Justin Tafa has not been taken down once in the UFC. And it's not like he's fought Curtis Blades. But also, come on, you already know Jose and I opinion. We don't think Curtis Blades is the greatest wrestler anyways. And he kind of showed that against Almeida. He didn't even get a takedown. He got record amount of takedowns against him. But what I'm trying to say is that Justin Tafa still has had takedown attempts that he has declined against multiple fighters in the heavyweight division, and some of them are pretty decent wrestlers. I don't see Carl Williams getting a takedown on Justin Tafa unless he just spams, like just goes for 10, 15, 20 takedown attempts. And I think Tafa's going to time that out and just nail him one of those takedown attempts. So, man, it's crazy to me that you can get Justin Tafa at plus 158 that is one of the best underdog picks that I can see on this card. Of course, my two higher weights are favorites. So this is my heaviest weighted underdog on the card, and boy, am I confident in this one. Justin Tafa is an insane value in my opinion. I'm curious to see what you think, Jose.
Dude, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of value in Tafa being this big of an underdog. I actually, but and I will say, I do have Tafa. He is my one way. I'm the least confident in him in terms of he's kind of like tied to Uvasa, and I had tied to Uvasa last week, and we saw how that went. Dude, he has power and he's willing to throw a lot and willing to get hit, but he also absorbs a lot. Justin Tafa's absorption rate per minute is 5.93, while Carl Williams is 1.8. So that's the only thing that does kind of worry me is like, how much damage is Justin Tafa going to take, and is it going to actually affect the outcome of the fight? Because Carl Williams, the thing is too, he hasn't really he, even though he has a 9-1 record, he hasn't really beaten anyone impressive in the UFC yet. Like Lucas Brzeski, dude has yet to win any of his fights in the UFC, and he's like 4-0 or 5-0 with including Dana White's Contender Series and the UFC. So that win is like pretty much a gimme to Carl Williams and Chase Sherman too. It looks better because Chase Sherman did get 2 wins after this loss, but Chase Sherman also is like, he's not anything really too special in the heavyweight division. In Justin Tafa himself lost to Jared Vanderaa, a couple 3 years ago now, but still, like, and then since then he's went on to get his own 3-fight winning streak. But again, the people he's beaten, Harry Hunsucker, Parker Porter, and Austin Lane, these are dudes he should realistically have knocked out all of them. Unless I'm looking, yes, he did, just by those names. So since he lost to Jared Vanderaa, again, who's not even that good, and then he goes on to beat 3 people who aren't really that good either, it is a lot of value for Tafa being an underdog. That's what I'll say. Both dudes haven't really been, you know, scary good guys, and I really think it's in the odds of whoever to really finish each other. But when Tafa is this big of an underdog, it's hard not to side with him. If it was tied to Uvasa as well, obviously I'm gonna do the same thing again. Just because, yeah, these guys they absorb a lot of hits, but they have power behind their hits where they can, it doesn't take much to just put them out. And I think, he may be able to catch Carl Williams. But if it comes to unanimous decision, I am worried that Justin Toffel will lose that, just because also the size difference. Carl Williams has a 5-inch reach advantage over Justin Taffa. So if Justin Taffa does not put out Carl Williams, I think it's pretty obvious that I think it may end up going to um, decision for Carl Williams. Even though Justin Taffa, I think that Carl Williams will probably end up getting the better end of these exchanges, and which probably shows why he's also a -198 favorite. But that being said, yeah, I got Taffa, but he's my least confident. And that's why he's my one weight.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's really fair, man. I think it's really kind of comes down to, clearly a lot of people are riding Carl Williams, and if you think he's the real deal, then you can continue to ride him here. I personally think he's been given a bunch of free wins in the UFC, and I'm not sitting here saying that Justin Taffa is like amazing or anything, but he has at least shown improvement. And like you said, he's knocking out the guys that he should knock out, and he's getting the work done that he should get done. Carl Williams is kind of just coasting along, winning fights by decision, not really doing anything special. And like I said, if that's how this fight plays out, I would fully expect Junior. I keep wanting to say Junior, but it's Justin Taffa to really use, like, I'm telling you, man, watch those leg kicks. He is such a beefy man that I don't care how big the reach advantage for Carl Williams is. If he's getting leg kicked like that, like I at least expect him to be, oh my goodness, he's going to be much more worried about his broken shin bone or something like that, man. It's going to be pretty bad for him. I do not think he's fought anyone, even in the same realm of power that Taffa has.
No, I agree with you that Taffa, he's definitely, he has elite power, even though he's not at a ranking or at a level to be elite, but his power is definitely up there with those big guys. Like he reminds me definitely like of Mark Hunt, and not just because they're both Samoan, but like literally like he is just like Mark Hunt. I feel like so. Super Samoan had so many knockouts, or Derek Lewis. So yeah, it's very live, and I can even top fight. I can see him getting his ass kicked the entire fight, and then the last minute knocking him out like Derek Lewis has done before too. So and
Yeah,
Rosenstrike too. So it can
true.
happen. So there's always a puncher's chance for sure. I got top. I'm just not as confident, so that's why he's my one weight.
Sounds good. Well, that leaves us one more fight to discuss on this card, and I'll leave it up to you, Jose.
Yes. And this last fight is my two weight, and this is the middleweight bout between Edmund Shabazian and AJ Dobson. Right now, Edmund Shabazian is the betting favorite at minus 205, while AJ Dobson is the betting underdog at plus 158. For this one, I'm going with another underdog. I'm going with Dobson. Reason being is like, yes, he's coming off just two losses, but Edmund Shabazian as well, he's just not, you know, it's just not been going his way. He was once a prospect in the UFC, but since that loss to Derek Brunson, he's pretty much gone downhill. And he did have one good fight against Dolce Lungimiambula, but other than that, he went back to lose against Anthony Hernandez again, and he just pretty much overall he's 4-1 in his last five fights, and I just don't think it's his time. He's just not the guy that and he's only 26 years old, which is great. So I guess there is still time, but definitely not the same prospect that we once thought of. While AJ Dobson, he's 32 years old. He is coming off a one win unanimous decision win, I should say. My bad. And then before that, he had two losses, but other than that, he's had an undefeated career before his first loss to Jacob Malcolm back in 2022, and he hasn't really fought much since then. He's only fought two other times. So the one thing I would say is Edmund. Both guys have actually been about as productive, I would say, but in this one, I think there's just too much value behind AJ Dobson being this big of an underdog and to the point where like. Yeah, he is my two weight, and not much other than the striking percentages too. I think AJ Dobson is going to come in and pretty much man up Edmund Shabazian. And to be honest, a lot of dudes just straight up have been handling Edmund Shabazian like manhandling him, especially because Edmund Shabazian's wrestling was never the best, and he's always showing that he's getting better and better. But when it comes to the grappling, I think AJ Dobson's not going to offer anything too special to throw Edmund Shabazian off, but I think it's going to be enough to keep him at bay and just land more strikes. When it comes to significant strikes, AJ Dobson lands more than Edmund Shabazian. He lands 4.38, while Edmund lands 3.46. My worry is that Dobson too. He does the ratio is pretty though because both guys absorb more than they're landing. And AJ Dobson absorbs about a 5.25 significant strikes per minute, which is my only worrisome thing about him. But again, that's why he's also my two weight. But when it's someone against Edmund Shabazian and they're this big of an underdog, I just would not count them out. And it's mostly also because it's Edmund Shabazian. So that's my thoughts on this one. I got the underdog as my two weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
Yeah, man, a lot of dogs. I think there's a lot of dog potential here on Saturday night, and the odds kind of show it. There's really not many fights that even break like even Rose is the only fight tonight that we've discussed that breaks over a 2-1 barrier in terms of being a 2-1 or higher favorite. So it kind of just goes to show. I suppose Edmund Shabazian's right on the line in the fight we're discussing now. Shabazian's right at that minus 200 line. But other than that, it's pretty close fights on this card, and I'm ready to pick a few of these underdogs. I'm with you on AJ Dobson, but very low confidence. He's my one weight to be specific. It's of course just process of elimination, the only weight left on my board, and for the main reason that like I get that Shabbat like he's 1-4 in his last five, and it looks horrible, but they are against really impressive fighters. Like I'm not harmed like unless you're a champion, to lose to Derek Brunson is not bad at all. Jack Hermanson, Nasruddin Imavov, all those losses I would say aged well. All those guys are solid fighters. Anthony Hernandez maybe being the one that's like, okay. I don't know if that's the best fighter to lose to, but he even came out earlier this year, last month, and beat Roman Kopylov in a fight I didn't think he would. So Anthony Hernandez is even coming up really well on his own. So To me, none of Shabazian's losses are one of those things where it's like, oh, he was exposed. He looks bad, you know? And to be honest, Dobson has a similar situation. Like, Petrosian's a great fighter to lose to. And Jacob Malkoun, I would not say Jacob Malkoun is great. He's definitely average. But he's also not like the worst guy in the world to lose to. And Dobson's starting out his career. He's still young. So to take a loss like that and learn from it, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, of course, it happened over 2 years ago now as well. So you can grow and learn from stuff like that. In the end, one of the small things that led me towards, you know what, I'll take Dobson here is also his ability to grapple and take things to the ground if he feels that he needs to. He almost lands two takedowns per fight. And if he feels he needs to, he will go for the submission attempts. He did finish in the Dana White Contender Series his opponent to get his UFC contract via submission. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to just take down Shabazian and finish him, because Shabazian he's not an easy guy to take down, and he's never been finished, even against guys like Anthony Hernandez who have a good wrestling base. I just feel like it's one of those things that's great to have in your back pocket, and the threat that he poses, should something go south, is worthwhile of at least note, in my opinion. So Shabazian, he has some value, but in the end, when it's this close, I'm with Jose. I see more value in the dog. I think AJ Dobson also has slightly more power. Call me crazy. I know he doesn't have as many knockouts on his board, but he's more of a fresh fighter. He doesn't have as many professional fights, and I really think he's going to have an impressive show. My last note is that, personally, I don't think either of these two fighters is another situation where neither of these two fighters are going to be like future belt challengers, in my opinion, right? I just think they're good fighters that are going to be there. They're going to be respected. We're going to enjoy watching them, and then we're going to forget about them, right? I think this is going to be one of those fights. It's going to be a great fight to watch, but we're not going to go afterwards saying, oh, so and so should be going to, one or two more fights and he's getting a belt shot. I don't think that'll be the case for either one of these dudes anytime soon.
More the more I look at it too, the more I want to go with say that I think AJ Dobson may even be able to knock out Edmund Shabazian, because out of all of Shabazian's losses, out of his four losses, he has been knocked out 3 times, and those 3 times have come in within since 2020, and he's only lost once by decision, and he's only won once by decision. So the chance and AJ Dobson's never been finished in his career, so I don't know if Edmund Shabazian will have an easy time knocking out. It's not going to be an easy time at all. So if this does drag out to decision, Edmund really needs to look unanimously good to get this decision win, which he barely has. And I mean, again, he's been.
I think Jose's cutting out here. Oh no, Jose's got like a. That's funny. It's like glitching. But I think we kind of understand what Jose was trying to say, in that there is a decently strong likelihood that AJ Dobson lands that KO. I think he was kind of getting on a good point, and that even Shabazian's most recent win was a KO win. So he maybe is kind of feeling some of the pressure, like, I don't want to get KO'd, so I'm going to go get a KO. And maybe he gets a little overzealous. Maybe he reaches a little too hard to try finishing Dobson. Because as much as Shabazian's been consistent and durable to not get finished, well, at least against low-end fighters, right? Of course, Imavov should be finishing a lower-end fighter like Shabazian, but AJ Dobson, I really think is live. I agree with Jose. Live for a KO here. I think he's going to be very aggressive, and this small cage is another aspect to this fight that I think plays out to make it a little bit more violent for sure. Looks like, there we go. It looks like Jose finally got booted from Discord. So I'm not sure if he'll get a chance to come back to us here. But in any case, we were just about finished here at Moneyline MMA. In any case, we've given our 5 weighted picks for this card. And just as a quick recap and a reminder that our 5 weight pick and our lock of the week is actually going to be Billy Quarantillo. a guy that we both have met, a guy that we both respect a lot. He's going to put it towards his opponent, Yusuf Zalal, on Saturday night. And on top of him, if you really want to get a little spicy, you might as well bet a little parlay two-leg with Jose and I's locks of the week, which is, of course, Billy Quarantillo. And the second lock is Rose Namajunas with a combined 7-weight confidence between Jose and I. Rose should be able to get the job done using her championship pedigree, especially if we get the Rose that we should see. I don't think she's going to have some of the floating demons like she did against Carla Esparza, knowing she's gotten submitted in the past. I think she's going to feel a lot more free and ready to go. The only concern being that, of course, a lot of the coaches that she had for the championship run are no longer a part of her camp. So we'll see if she's able to put together a solid performance otherwise with these coaches. That being said, I'll let you guys get going. Of course, Jose and I will be back next. Jose. Oh, there you are, Jose. I think you're muted, though. I can't hear you.
Dude, my bad. Yeah, my internet went out. How much of that closing statement did you guys get?
Pretty much all of it.
Thank God. I
closed.
thought I finished it. Okay, hell yeah.
Yeah, I was just finishing up, but we got. I think we got the point in that Dobson's kind of live for a KO.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that was the because I was like about to say like that was actually important that I wanted to get that out, and I was about to say like, okay, I'm glad you guys caught that and why I justify it that way because Edmonds, out of his 4 losses, 3 are via KO, so I like those odds for Dobson as the underdog.
Yeah, and I even added the fact that like it looked like Shabazian's win, his most recent win, was also a KO. It makes me feel like he's going to be kind of a little like, I don't know if desperate's the right word, but he's going to push the pace for a KO. And it kind of feels like KO or bust for a lot of his fights. So I like Dobson in that scenario.
And and the thing, that now that you mention it too, is just like he tries to rush. If he tries to rush a finish, when he's done that and he can't do it, like against Derek Brunson, he gasses out. So that is something too. See, he's just his gas tank has been a recurring issue throughout his fights too. So, and they've definitely contributed to some of his losses. So that's another factor too.
For sure. So sounds good. We're wrapping it up here at Moneyline MMA. We'll be back again, of course, next week, coming at you with a few fight night weeks in a row leading up to next month. I think UFC 300 is under a month away officially, but I believe we're still going to have 2 or 3 cards before UFC 300. So definitely make sure to keep tuning in. Jose and I are on a streak. We're both above 500. We're winning money. Definitely ride with us and let us know down below who you will be taking. Thanks for listening and have a great week.